By the time I was 16, my mom was pretty much done parenting me. And that's because when you grow up in a small factory town in central Ohio, getting your driver's license is the same kind of rite of passage that like graduating from college might be on the East Coast. That's it, your parents have done their business by you, you're grown, you can drive yourself to school, you can drive your siblings to the mall. Go ahead, get married, have kids, that's all that's required of you. But that first summer that I was 16, I didn't feel fully grown. I didn't know what exactly I wanted from my life, but I thought it maybe wasn't getting married and having kids right away. No one in my family had ever left town or gone to college, and none of my friends planned to do that, and I didn't know if that's what I wanted to do, but I knew I might want something more. And so I was a little bit adrift. But the one bright spot in my life was my incredibly glamorous best friend, Kelly, who was a very mature 21 years old. And she had 3 things going for her that I knew I wanted to attain for my adult life. Her own place, the ability to buy beer, and a tongue ring. I knew that whatever the future held for me, as long as it held those 3 things, I would be okay. But beyond that, beyond those glamorous personal accoutrements, Kelly also had something that no one else in my life had, and that was a dream. And her dream was to open a pet store. And so I spent tons of time out at her little house, her little apartment out in the country, and we talked about it all the time, like how it was gonna happen and what she would do and space, and I found the whole thing very inspiring, and I was really happy to be out there smoking cigarettes and not being under my mother's thumb. And later on that summer, Kelly started dating this guy named Roger, who I also really liked, and the 3 of us started spending a lot of time together. And Roger was 23, which is very old when you're 16, and he was, right, and he like chewed tobacco and drove a pickup truck, and he fixed my car when he broke down, and he was very kind to Kelly, and I thought he was fantastic, and he also had something else that was very attractive, and that is a tragic backstory. Because you see, shortly before I met Roger, his fiance had been killed in a car accident. Right, and so we had to be careful every time we talked about cars or weddings or fiancés, or that Roger would just get morose and sad, and we'd have to like change the subject really fast. And because there were all these emotions flying around, you know, Roger and Kelly got very close very quickly, and it was no surprise at the end of that summer they got engaged, and they asked me to be in their wedding. It was not the first or the last time I was in a wedding in high school. I wore a fire engine red satin dress from the JCPenney outlet. It cost $12. My partner in the wedding was Roger's best friend, a man named Squirrel. He was this tall. And he spent the evening feeding me Bartles and James peach wine coolers and like nuzzling up for the slow songs. But I was so happy at the wedding because Kelly was happy and that made me happy and it was great. And her mom gave them a piece of land as a wedding gift, way out in the woods, and they bought a nice double-wide trailer and put it on there and started collecting more animals for the pet store. And so spending time out there, right, and so spending time out there became even greater. We would like listen to Hank Williams Jr. and have campfires, and there was a wallaby and like these Angora rabbits that were really funky, and she had lizards and snakes and rats to feed the lizards and snakes, and she was a big cat person, so she also had like a bobcat and a lynx and this like crazy half house cat, half kill you when you're sleeping cat, and you wind up on Dateline. It was like a Siberian serval or something. And so I just had a lot of fun out there, and they seemed to be getting along really well, and everything was going great, and I thought, you know, this is a life. I see the appeal of this life, but meanwhile, good things were happening for me too. And at the end of what was my senior year of high school, I went on a class trip to Paris, and it totally blew my mind. First of all, I'd been selling candy bars to myself for like 10 years to pay for it. So it was a huge accomplishment. But beyond that, I totally fell in love with the language and the architecture and the smelly French cheese and the smelly French boys. And I came home and I was just electrified, and I couldn't wait to get out to Kelly and Rogers and tell them all about it. But when I got there, things were a little bit weird. And I couldn't quite figure out what was wrong with the energy in the place, but I knew that it was something. And so I tried to chatter on about pain au chocolat or whatever, but Roger excused himself really early and went to bed, and the minute the bedroom door clicked behind him, Kelly turned to me and said, "There's something I need to tell you." And I was like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And she said, "Well, you know that story about Roger's dead fiance?" And I was like, "Yeah, like the seminal Roger story, of course I know it." She said, "Well, you know, something about it had just started to bother me. Like, no one ever talks about this woman. No one ever talks to her family. There are no pictures of her. And when I tried to ask his mom about it, she just got all weird on me. So while you were gone, I went to the library and did some research, and I couldn't find anything. No obituary, no article about the wreck, nothing. And so I came home and confronted Roger and said, what's going on? And he completely broke down and admitted that the whole thing was a lie. What happened is, he had gotten drunk and slept through his shift at work. And when his manager called to say, his manager at Nationwide Auto Parts, called and said, hey, you're fired. He said, oh, no, you can't fire me. I didn't come because my fiance was in this terrible car accident and she died. And that's why I didn't call you. And so his manager, who also happened to be Kelly's boyfriend at the time, said, oh my goodness, well, take all the time you need and then come out to the house and Kelly and I will make you dinner and soothe you. But then Kelly started soothing him with her vagina. Right? And the next thing the guy knows, he's picking out groomsmen and co-parenting a flock of fainting goats and he can't come clean. Like, what's he supposed to do? So, I'm in shock, total shock. And so is Kelly, and I have 3 distinct narratives running through my mind. First of all, I'm comforting Kelly, right? I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, what can I do? How are you? This is terrible. But at the same time, my internal narrative is more like, oh my God, I am the worst judge of character ever. Like, how could I have spent all this time with this person who is obviously a complete sociopath and not ever suspected it? Like, he's gonna come out of the bedroom any minute and kill us with an axe, and that's why I'm gonna end up on Dateline. Because that's what crazy people do when their web of lies is exposed. But then another part of me was able to take a step back and say, I've got to get the fuck out of this town. This would never happen in Paris. So things happened pretty quickly after that for all of us. Kelly kicked Roger out, and to celebrate her impending, independent womanhood, she went and got a tattoo, and she fell in love with her tattoo artist. And he moved in, a week after Roger moved out. They got a lion to celebrate their union, and they named it Hope, because they hoped it didn't get too big. Spoiler alert, it did. And I, shortly thereafter, caught a really lucky break that allowed me to come to DC and study international affairs at GW, where I plan to, buff and blue, where I plan to become the ambassador to France, because I think we can all agree that that's an obvious career path for the best French speaker in Newark, Ohio, which I was. But and I've been in DC for 20 years now. Well, I'm not the ambassador to France, obviously, and I haven't talked to Kelly and Roger for a long time. I do still think about them from time to time because this all happened at a very formative time for me, right? And it was a huge deal. It was a huge betrayal of what I thought was reality and a huge lesson about not trusting people and all that. And I think, what is my takeaway? What is the lesson that I should have learned from that, besides that I don't want to live in the woods with a bunch of wild animals? And I think it's that maybe I should just add a tragic backstory to my OkCupid profile. See if I can't get that first marriage under my belt. Thank you.